Hello, welcome. This is Chris Morgan. This is the third video in our Reaktor Subtractive Synth video tutorial. In the previous video, we created a panel object that would allow us to choose between different wave shapes: sine, ramp, square, triangle, noise. We have note pitch coming from a keyboard and the velocity from the keyboard functioning as the gate, which is just the way you do it in Reaktor. The next thing we want to do is give this sound some shape. If you notice, since it's just a gate, note is on or off. I'll switch it to ramp wave. To move my object around in the panel here, I'm going to click on the wrench tool, and I can move that over a little bit. You can see it's not very flexible or friendly when it's the only thing. Once we get more objects inside of the panel, we'll be able to move things around and work with it more nicely. I should point out now, just in terms of display, this is as toggle buttons. If we click on anything in either the structure or the panel, we look to the left here, it has its standard function info, which is about it, the view, which is important for us because we can set the style of this to be a menu, for instance, and we can also change the name from just plain old switch to wave shape or VCO wave shape if we want to use that terminology, VCO wave shape. And so that makes that look nicer, and we can change the size and also the width and everything like that. So that's good to know. A lot of anything that shows up in the panel will have some visible elements to it. And so going back to our synth now, we have the different wave shapes. We want to, at this point, add an envelope generator to shape the onset time and release time. So very easy to do. Control click, built-in module, go down to the LFO envelope. Of all these different types of envelope generators here, we just primarily use the standard ADSR for everything in this course. There's all these variations which are good and come in handy one time or the other, but for what we need, ADSR satisfies everything. So we click on that. And now two important things here. This envelope generator is going to generate a signal, unipolar signal that goes from 0 to 1, which is perfectly great for amplitude. Later, if we're trying to use it to map to pitch, then we might need to change that range, or especially like filter cutoff frequency, which is much bigger in the thousands of hertz. We will need to rescale that. So by default, things like the gate, the LFO, any oscillators, ranges, -1 to +1, envelope generators, 0 to 1, those are all great because they all work perfectly fine for amplitude, but they'll need to be rescaled for other values. But we want to keep them safe within 0 to 1 so that we don't accidentally clip. Now, they're very critical at this point. When you control click on inlets of an object, Reaktor will give you two choices: create, control, or constant. Sometimes we'll want just the number value and we'll use the constant. But for the controls, these will show up in the panel, which is perfect. But there's one danger here. The first one is gate. If it creates a control there, notice that it puts a gate button in the panel, and that's pretty much worthless for us to control a sound to turn off and on. But for instance, I can hook that up and to this sine wave, choose sine wave as my wave shape, and then when I play on the keyboard, I don't hear anything. I see MIDI coming in, but there's nothing happening because this gate is a button gate. So if I press, you can hear a little bit of a click there. I don't have any attack time or so forth. But what I need is my MIDI gate to come in. So now when I play, I will get a sound. Of course, I do need to add some other things here. So let me add those. I'll control click on amplitude and say create control. Control click on decay. It will create a control. And the reason it wasn't making any sound a second ago is because all those things were defaulting to 0. So now they've got some range, some values here. Notice Reaktor crams everything in the upper left-hand corner every time. So I will turn on the wrench and move all those objects over, and you can see the default values for these objects, these controls, are usable instead of just defaulting to 0. And now I'll hear some sound with a medium attack, medium decay, medium sustain level, and medium release time. Let me switch it to a more interesting sound. In order to use the panel, I have to switch out of wrench mode, and you notice the editing mode changes, and I'll click to ramp. So not a whole lot of difference at this point, but let me increase the release time. And of course I need to hook this up to the ramp so we can actually hear it, or the sawtooth wave. Hook all these up. So we're not using the button gate, but I'll hook that up to demonstrate it in a second. And I'll decrease the attack time to make it very quick, and you'll hear a faster attack. Now, a very popular sound is like a clav sound. That's a fast attack, a fast decay with a low sustain level. You can hear that very punchy attack, fast decay. More of a clav would have a faster release than that. Not that fast. So much more of attack there, and a typical pad sound might have a slow attack and slow release, and doesn't have to drop that down far down on the sustain level. Okay, now going back to demonstrate the difference between the MIDI gate and the gate that came in as a control. If I were to switch it to gate there, I play MIDI notes and I don't hear anything because there's no MIDI gate coming in. There's a gate there, so if I press some keys down and press the gate button, I'll hear the sounds, which is great, but that's not the way I want to play the instrument. But there's times where you might want to use a trigger on screen and you click on it. But for our purposes, we'll control click on ADSR, but we'll use our MIDI input gate to use that, and I'll delete that object. Now we have an ADSR envelope generator controlling all our wave shapes, and next we will add some LFO to the pitch.